Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say that I agree with Senator Blumenthal that I too would enjoy the Russians coming before the United States courts for our justice. And I appreciate his work on this important issue. I wanted to follow up, thank you both for what you're doing. I know you're serving during very challenging times and trying to work on this acquisition issue, which has been a continuous challenge long before I got in the Senate, and something, though, given the resource scarcity we face right now, has become even more important. So thank you both for your leadership on that. One of the things that, as I think about the choices that we make and why this is so important, I could pull each branch of the service and come up with a number of examples. I know my colleagues have already raised them. So I'm going to focus a minute on the Air Force, but I have a list that I could also share with the Army and the other branches. So I am in no way at this moment picking on the Air Force. But as I look at the recent Air Force acquisition programs, from 2007 to 2013, the Air Force terminated 12 major acquisition programs, as I understand it, and the cost of those was at $6.8 billion on weapon systems and programs that our airmen aren't going to see. Some of the examples of that are $2.8 billion wasted on the National Polar Orbiting Operational Environmental Satellite System, which was ended in 2012, $2.5 billion wasted on the Transformational Satellite Communication System, terminated in 2009, $900 million wasted on the Expeditionary Combat Support System, and that is billions of dollars that will never have a direct benefit for our warfighters. I realized that we could do a postmortem on each of these programs, and for each program, there's a variety of reasons of terminations, yet we find ourselves in the same place, that it's money that was spent that isn't going to get the outcome that we need for the defense of the nation. So, one issue that I want to put this in perspective, because this matters when you're coming, when the Pentagon is coming to us and the service chiefs are coming to us and asking us to divest of a program like the A-10 for budget reasons, because the cost of maintaining the A-10 in fiscal year 2015 is about $635 million. And if the Air Force had cut their acquisition failures on major defense acquisition programs just by 10% in the years I've talked about between 2007 and 13, there would be the equivalent to more than enough savings to afford keeping the entire A-10 fleet. And the reason I want to put it in those perspectives is because the importance of this issue cannot be underestimated, that we get the acquisition process right, that we don't go down roads where we've put so many requirements on something that no one can possibly produce it, so that we can use it in time for our men and women in uniform. And so I'm going to ask both of you, just, would you agree with me that this obviously is incredibly important that we get it right, not just the Air Force, but every single service branch? And what is it that we can do to make sure, with the experiences that you've had, I know you've made some changes with the Better Buying Powers initiative, the requirements creep issue, how are we dealing with that? How do we make sure that when we're looking at taxpayers, we're not saying to them, here's the Air Force proposal to eliminate an airframe that our men and women in uniform on the ground love truly, when we have all these other failed acquisition programs that didn't get us a result? I think we owe that explanation to people.
Thanks, Senator. I regard the cancellation of a program after we spent a few years and a few $1 billion on it is almost pure waste. And one of the greatest tragedies the department faces, I worked as a consultant on Future Combat Systems, which was for the Army an enormous fraction of their development account, which essentially produced nothing for the Army at the end of the day.
Right. I had that on my Army list, but we...
No, the Army's list is longer than some of the others, but all of them, each service has its own list. And I published information on this in the volume I published last summer on the performance of the acquisition system, because I'm tracking historically what we're doing here. One of the principal things I put in place to try to prevent this is the affordability caps, which force people to do, and it's the requirements people this is pointing at, and the budget people. Mr. Sullivan mentioned the three systems. One way to bring them together is to insist that the requirements people and the budget people evaluate the cost of their programs that they propose over the long term, over the life cycle of that program, not just for the next few years, but as long as you're going to have it in the inventory, and determine whether or not you can really fit that into your capital structure. We've been doing this for about 4 years now. I'm enforcing those caps. There's one on the VXX we talked about earlier. And the idea of these caps is to discipline the requirements people and the budget people to not try to do more than they can actually do, and to figure that out early instead of after you spent several years and several $billion.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan? No, Phil.
Yes, I would agree. First of all, I agree with you that it's a significant issue and it needs to be solved. It's a waste of money. And the taxpayers and the warfighter are the ones that suffer as a result. I think the department does not. I started out with in my oral statement stating that the three big processes we're talking about, the Undersecretary just went through them, requirements, budgeting, and acquisition have to work together, and they don't. And we've done best practices work on that, trying to find ways, big enterprises, far-flung industries and things are able to do that. There's a way to do that. A lot of it is a cultural issue, but requirements are at the basis of all of that. Portfolio management is important. I think the department should treat its major weapon system acquisitions more like a portfolio where they understand what years these programs are coming in and leaving, where they understand exactly how much they're going to cost because they're doing systems engineering up front, and the requirements people and the acquisition workforce are working together to get proper requirements. They need to use incremental kind of designs and acquisition programs so they don't bite off more than they can chew. But typically what you have is too many programs chasing too few dollars. And there's no real good budget controls because they have a 5-year defense plan. Most of these programs are supposed to be fully funded, but when you have a 5-year defense plan and a 10-year development program, it's hard to fully fund it. And the estimates aren't any good. That's it. When we started out, the WISARA and the Better Buying Power initiatives are addressing a lot of this. I said that, since 2009, 2010, the programs that we've seen coming through Milestone B seem to have more systems engineering done, requirements in better shape. But, just to conclude, those three processes, there has to be a way to break down the cultural barriers that exist and get those three processes to work together at the start.
I know that my time is up. Also, I understood, Secretary Kendall, what you said about the workforce challenges and why that, in terms of oversight, presents a real problem in terms of transition, people leaving, some political appointees, some not, challenging. And so any recommendations you have, one thought that I had is there a way to incentivize this? I mean, I don't know whether it's financial or otherwise, but to think through how do we incentivize the things that you are both trying to accomplish as more ingrained in the culture?
I would like a way to keep my best people longer, best program managers, and I would like a way to reward people who do an exceptional job more effectively. We give people recognition today. We try to increase the amount of professional recognition, which is career enhancing for people. It's very difficult within the military culture in particular, and even in the civil service system. But I haven't thought about this thoroughly in terms of a legislative proposal that would give people additional compensation or more cash bonuses.
Right, or they...
Which is what industry does. Industry uses bonuses.
Correct.
To reward
When they overperform,
yes,
then
exactly.
They have an incentive to do that. And I think this is so important to us because of the cost savings we could achieve, that it would make sense for us to think about how are we treating the personnel in terms of priority on this issue.
One of the things that was mentioned earlier was the should cost estimates. And what I'm requiring all of our managers to do now is to understand their cost structures, look for opportunities to reduce cost, and then they go try to set goals for themselves and then try to achieve those goals. That's what the should cost is that we've been talking about. And I would like a way to financially reward people for saving us money. That would be a dramatic improvement. If somebody can come in and show that they've made a significant savings to the department and to the nation by the way they have gone in and controlled their cost, we ought to give them something in return for doing that. But we really don't have any way in our system to do that right now.
Thank you.